you don't need to add sugar to your basic bread recipes. Here's a bit more about why and the difference it could make to your bread making. I'm Rhiannon, owner of the Epsom Bakehouse, and if you'd like more bread making tips and recipes and information about my online classes, then you can sign up to my regular newsletter via the link below this video. You'll also get information on my upcoming live online classes where you can bake bread along with me, including some sugar-filled and delicious cinnamon buns towards the end of this month. And cinnamon buns are one of those recipes where sugar is part of the ingredients. It adds to the taste and to the sweet, light dough of that finished product. And so, of course, there are some bread recipes where you will need to add sugar, and it is just part of the process. Things like brioche, Chelsea buns, and delicious sweet treats such as those. However, a lot of recipes you might find asking you to add, say, a teaspoon or two of sugar, perhaps in with the yeast or into the main recipe. And it's this I wanted to say, do you need to add that sugar into your bread? Or if you'd rather, can you leave it out? What's it doing in there? Well, a lot of times that sugar is added in to activate. It's often talking about activating the yeast, or helping that yeast become more active. And the yeast is in your bread dough to create gas, to rise your bread dough. So the yeast digests the other components of your bread, things like the flour, and they break that down, feed on it, and release gas that rises your dough. So perhaps it does start to make sense that you need to add that sugar in. But all it's really doing in there is adding a quick meal for the yeast. It's a bit like if you or I perhaps wanted some quick energy, and you might eat something like a chocolate bar, and that instant sugar hit can give you that burst of energy. However, it's not particularly long term. And in fact, all it does is speed your yeast up a little bit. So that process, your yeast will still be producing gas even if you don't add the sugar in. And in fact, I did add some yeast with some flour into this jug a little while ago, and I've already got a level of bubbles across the top without adding any sugar in, because the yeast are already feasting on that flour, breaking it down, breaking the starches down, and creating the food they need to produce the gas that's going to rise your dough. So in fact, you do not need to add any additional sugar if you don't want to into those basic recipes, perhaps where you're just using things like flour, water, salt and yeast, and you'd rather not have that extra sweetness in your loaf. You don't need to add the sugar in. Instead, give your yeast the time to break down the starches in the flour, as they would do anyway, and produce the sugars they feed on to create gas and rise your dough. So the difference that might make to your bread making is that the process may take a little bit longer, but there's some great things about that. One, you'll get probably more flavour into your loaf. So your yeast are breaking down the starches into sugars and other complex carbohydrates, which all add flavour to your final dough. So have some patience, allow your dough the time to rise, allow your yeast the time to start working, producing that gas. And also you then have a little bit more time to go off and do whatever else you need while your dough rises all on its own, all without you needing to add that additional sugar into your bread. So why not give it a go? Instead of putting your yeast into, say, some sugary water or adding that additional sugar into your basic bread recipe, try leaving it out, give your dough a little bit longer to rise, and you will still turn out some delicious bread. Let me know if you've tried this at home, or if you have any other bread making tips or questions that you would like answered. And as mentioned, if you would like any more bread making tips, recipes and information about all my live and recorded online classes where you can learn step by step with further great tips like this and recipes such as baguettes, ciabatta, cinnamon buns, sourdough, Chelsea buns, and many more, then do click the link below this video and join my newsletter. And I'll be back again soon with another bread making tip.